The village of Windmere had not changed. Nestled between the moors and old stone walls, it looked exactly as Isla remembered it. Quiet, proud, and indifferent to time. She stepped off the train with her daughter's small hand tucked in hers, a rucksack over her shoulder, and a weight in her chest that had never quite lifted. Nia, 7 years old and curious as ever, tilted her head as they walked past the iron gate of Windmere Hall. "Mom, are you nervous?" she asked. Isla gave her a faint smile. "A little. This place. It doesn't hold the best memories." They approached the hall not as guests, but as strangers. The music memorial for Agnes Harrington, Isla's grandmother, was to be held that afternoon. Everyone in the family had received embossed invitations weeks ago. Isla had not. She found out from a local newspaper clipping mailed anonymously to her flat in Bristol. Inside the hall, familiar faces moved like ghosts. Her mother, Margaret, still wore her hair in a rigid bun. Her brother Callum stood near the grand piano, laughing too loudly. Eliza, her sister, whispered behind a flute of champagne, eyes darting towards Isla the moment she entered. "What are you doing here?" Margaret asked, her voice cold as Yorkshire frost. "I came to pay my respects," Isla replied, her chin lifted. "This isn't some street performance," Callum muttered. The sting was sharp, but she did not flinch. She guided Nia forward, not meeting their eyes. As they settled on a side bench, the familiar scent of old oak and varnish filled Isla's senses. The same hall where she once played piano under her grandmother's proud gaze now pulsed with unease. It had been 15 years since she last touched those keys. The ceremony began. Speeches were made, each one polishing Agnes's legacy like crystal. Her talent, her elegance, her discipline. But none mentioned Isla, her first student, her shadow, her shame. The final part of the evening was a musical tribute. Each family member had prepared something to honor Agnes's memory. Isla was not on the program. As Callum played a stiff rendition of Mozart, Eliza rolled her eyes. Margaret dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, though no tears fell. The room echoed with polite applause, but it all felt rehearsed. Then Nia tugged on Isla's sleeve. "Mom, can I play something?" Isla turned to her, startled. "What would you play, darling?" Nia shrugged. "That melody you hum when you miss her." Isla's heart stopped. No one knew that melody. Not even Isla herself had realized she had been humming it aloud. It was something Agnes used to play to her in secret, a lullaby no one else had heard. Before Isla could say anything, Nia slipped from her seat and walked straight towards the grand piano. Whispers rose. Margaret stood. "Stop that child." But it was too late. Nia's small hands touched the keys, and the first notes of autumn's lullaby floated into the room. The room fell into a stunned silence as Nia's delicate fingers moved across the piano keys with surprising confidence. The melody was haunting and unfamiliar to most, yet it carried an unmistakable warmth, a whisper of a story long buried beneath years of silence. Isla's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. She remembered how her grandmother, Agnes, used to play this lullaby during quiet evenings when the rest of the family was asleep. It was their secret, a hidden thread binding them despite the fractures time had caused. The music flowed effortlessly, each note trembling with raw emotion. For the first time in many years, Isla felt a connection to her grandmother that she thought was lost forever. Margaret's lips tightened, her face pale as she watched Nia play. The other family members exchanged uneasy glances, suddenly aware that the child's performance had peeled back layers of unspoken tension. Isla sat still, holding her breath. Nia's playing was not just an innocent tribute. It was a challenge, a message echoing through the room, stirring memories that the Harrington family had tried to forget. As the final note faded, a heavy silence lingered. The applause was hesitant, fragmented. Some smiled awkwardly. Others looked away. Callum cleared his throat. "That was impressive for a child." Eliza's gaze was sharp, almost accusing. "Where did she learn that?" Isla found her voice, steady despite the pounding in her chest. "From me. Agnes taught me the melody when I was a child. I never thought anyone else would know it." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to believe that after all these years?" Isla stood, her spine straightening with newfound strength. "I came here because Agnes meant more to me than just a distant memory. That melody was her gift to me, and now to Nia. It belongs to our family." There was a sudden knock at the door. A stranger entered, an elderly man with a worn violin case. "I believe I have something that belongs to the Harringtons," he said quietly. All eyes turned to him. The man opened the case, revealing a faded sheet of music marked Autumn's Lullaby, but with a signature none had seen before. Isla felt a chill run down her spine. The story she thought she knew was about to change forever. The aged man carefully laid the sheet music on the polished wooden table. The signature was faded but unmistakable, a name none had expected to see. Ezra Harrington, Isla's grandfather, a man spoken of in whispers but never confronted directly. Isla's breath caught. Ezra had disappeared years before she was born, leaving behind a cloud of mystery and silence. Family stories painted him as a reckless dreamer, a man who abandoned his wife Agnes and their children. The revelation struck like a thunderclap. Could Ezra truly have composed Autumn's Lullaby? Had he been a part of Agnes's life, their shared music, after all? Margaret's face tightened, her usual composure faltering. "This is nonsense. Ezra was never a musician." The old man shook his head. "I was a friend to Ezra in his final years. He left me these papers with instructions to return them to his family when the time was right." Callum scoffed. "Why now? What's the point of stirring up old ghosts?" Isla's gaze hardened. "Because the truth matters. Agnes's story is incomplete without him." The room seemed to close in, heavy with decades of buried pain and unanswered questions. Isla's thoughts raced. She remembered the stories Agnes told her about the lullaby, how it was a secret between her and Ezra, a promise woven into the music. Now that promise was awakening, demanding to be heard. Nia watched her mother with wide eyes, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. The old man reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. This belonged to Ezra as well. "There are letters and notes that might explain more." Isla hesitated but took the journal in trembling hands. The reunion had transformed into a reckoning. The music was more than a memory. It was the key to unlocking the family's deepest secrets. Isla opened the worn leather journal carefully. The pages were yellowed, edges frayed, but the handwriting was unmistakably Ezra's, elegant, precise, and filled with emotion. She began to read aloud, her voice trembling at first but gaining strength with each word. October 12, 1978. "Agnes, my heart, my muse. I write this in shadows because the world will never understand us. The family sees me as a failure, but I have dreams they cannot grasp. The lullaby is my promise to you and our child, a melody to bind us beyond time and pain." Isla's breath hitched. The journal was a love letter, a confession, and a vow all in one. Margaret's eyes flickered with something Isla had never seen. Regret, perhaps guilt. Ezra's entries revealed a man trapped between his family's expectations and his true self. He spoke of struggles, sacrifices, and a secret he carried alone. A secret that would change everything. Isla's mind raced as she pieced together the fragments of her grandfather's life. Suddenly, a folded letter slipped out from between the pages. Isla unfolded it slowly, revealing handwriting that matched Ezra's but was addressed to Agnes's sister, Margaret. "My dearest Margaret, I fear my time is short. There are things I must explain to you before I am gone. The truth about our family's pain lies not in betrayal, but in protection. Please guard this secret until the day it can be shared." The room was heavy with silence once more. The family stared at Isla, waiting for her reaction. Isla's heart pounded. The reunion was no longer about old insults or grudges. It was about unveiling a truth that could heal or destroy them all. Nia reached out, taking her mother's hand gently. Isla knew she had to read on. Isla turned the pages of Ezra's journal with increasing urgency, as if desperate to uncover every hidden detail that could explain the mystery lingering over her family. Each entry revealed fragments of a man torn between duty and desire, love and regret. One passage caught her attention more than others. April 5, 1979. "The secret weighs heavily. Agnes must never know the full truth. Our family's reputation depends on silence. Yet, I fear this silence may be the very thing that breaks us. I carry a child not hers, a burden of love that must remain hidden." Isla gasped, the words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. Ezra was confessing to fathering a child outside of his marriage. A secret sibling, hidden and forgotten. Margaret's composure shattered. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, I tried to protect us all. Callum's anger flared. You kept this from us? From the whole family. Isla raised a hand to calm the storm. We need to hear everything. The elderly man nodded, his eyes reflecting years of sorrow. Ezra asked me to safeguard the truth until someone worthy came along to understand. Nia clung to her mother, sensing the weight of the revelations. Isla's mind raced, questions flooding her thoughts. Who was this hidden sibling? How had they changed the family's course? And what did Agnes truly know? The atmosphere thickened as the past clawed its way into the present, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed lives around the table. Suddenly, the door creaked open again. This time, it was a woman mid-30s, with eyes that mirrored Isla's own. She stepped inside quietly, holding a faded photograph. I think it's time I introduced myself, she said softly. The room fell into a stunned silence, the secret no longer buried, but alive. The woman stepped forward slowly, holding the faded photograph out for everyone to see. The image was old, a family gathering, children playing in a sunlit garden. And there, standing quietly in the corner, was a young girl with dark hair and eyes that mirrored Isla's own. I am Eliza, she said softly, voice steady but tinged with years of silence and longing. Ezra's daughter. A stunned silence fell over the room. Isla's heart pounded loudly in her chest. The puzzle pieces she had been chasing were finally falling into place. Margaret's face was a mix of sorrow and relief. Eliza, you were always meant to be part of this family, but circumstances forced us apart. Callum's expression hardened. So, all these years you kept her hidden? What else have you lied about? Isla looked at Eliza, searching for answers in the quiet strength of the woman before her. Why now? Why come forward today? Eliza's gaze held a quiet resolve. Because the music, the lullaby, it brought me here. I've carried this secret for too long. It's time we face the past together, and find a way to heal. Nia stepped closer to Eliza, curiosity overcoming any shyness. Are you going to stay? Eliza smiled gently, the first real warmth Isla had seen since the reunion began. Yes, Nia. I want to be part of this family now. The room, once filled with tension and unresolved anger, softened just a little. But Isla knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with more questions, revelations, and the challenge of rebuilding what had been broken. As the evening shadows lengthened, the family gathered close, united by the music and the secrets that finally refused to stay silent. The night deepened, and the old mansion seemed to breathe with memories long forgotten. Isla sat by the grand piano in the drawing room, Nia perched nearby, eyes wide with anticipation. Eliza lingered by the window, her gaze distant but hopeful. Isla's fingers hovered over the keys, hesitating before she began to play the lullaby Ezra had composed so many years ago. The melody filled the room softly at first, then grew with a gentle strength that seemed to bridge the past and present. As the notes floated through the air, the family felt something shift, a subtle easing of old wounds and grudges. Margaret wiped a tear from her cheek. Callum's jaw relaxed. Even Celeste, who had been cold and distant, seemed moved by the music. Eliza stepped forward, her voice joining the piano in a haunting, tender harmony. It was a voice that spoke of longing, forgiveness, and the unspoken bonds that held them all together. Nia clapped her hands softly, smiling as if the music had woven a new thread of connection through the family fabric. Isla looked around the room, seeing faces softened by the shared experience. For the first time in years, the house felt like home. Not just a building, but a place where love and acceptance might still grow. The lullaby had become more than a song. It was a symbol of hope and healing. But as the final note faded, Isla knew their journey was far from over. There were still truths to uncover, wounds to mend, and a future to build together. Dawn broke over the Yorkshire countryside, casting soft light through the tall windows of the old mansion. Isla stood on the veranda, looking out at the rolling fields that stretched beyond. Around her, the house buzzed with cautious hope and tentative smiles. Eliza sat beside Nia in the garden, their laughter mingling like a gentle song. Margaret was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, a quiet peace settling over her face. Callum and Celeste were speaking in low tones, their earlier tensions replaced by tentative understanding. Isla felt a deep calm she hadn't known in years. The journey through shadows, secrets, and sorrow had brought her family to a place of fragile healing. She thought of Ezra's journal, the hidden truths that had once threatened to tear them apart. Now, those truths were the very foundation on which they could rebuild. Nova's words echoed in her mind. We own this house. Yes, they did. Not just the walls and roof, but the memories, the love, and the strength to forgive. Isla turned to her daughter, smiling warmly. This is our home now. And with that, a new chapter began. One written not in silence or fear, but in honesty, hope, and the music of a family reunited.